I'm Nancy Lobby, the co-director of the North America Regenerative Grazing Lands Program for the Nature Conservancy.
I'm Kayla Donato. I'm the Agriculture Innovation Strategy Manager at TNC.
I'm Tegan May. I'm the North America Regenerative Grazing Lands Project Manager for the Nature Conservancy.
I'm Reed Henson. I'm the managing partner for Celium Group.
I'm Carson Sleep. I'm a sixth-generation rancher, and I work with Celium on this project.
I'm Jake Young. I'm a project director at New Leaf Climate Partners and a conservation advisor at Celium Group.
So thanks to everyone for attending this breakout session on solving a grassroots problem with purposeful innovation. I'm Nancy Lobby, co-director of the Nature Conservancy's Regenerative Grazing Land Strategy, and I'm joined by some wonderful panelists who are experts in the field of innovation, and I'll let them introduce themselves as we go. But first of all, let's do some level setting. For those that may not know about the Nature Conservancy, we're a global conservation organization focused on conserving the planet for people and nature. We have 6,000 plus employees worldwide, offices in all 50 states and more than 100 countries globally. And here at home, the North America Regenerative Grazing Land team has a goal of improving and protecting 240 million acres of intact grazing lands. And we do that in a variety of ways. We're working on that in a variety of ways. One is working directly with ranchers and rancher-led groups like the National Grazing Land Coalition. We also do some work with companies within the beef supply chain specifically, influencing how beef is sourced so that people and nature benefit. We also have a team focused on public policy, working to increase public investment in programs that keep ranchers, that help ranchers improve management and reduce red tape. And finally, we innovate. We want to identify and test solutions that transform the system. And how this project came about was early last year. We were working on something called the Regen Toolbox. And it was a suite of tools and resources to help ranchers measure, monitor, and equip them to change practices and hopefully improve their management. And we came to a point in the project where we identified a whole bunch of tools, but the majority of those tools were not being used by ranchers, and we wanted to know why. What was missing? Were they not the right tools? Were they hard to use? Do we need another tool to help ranchers use the tools? Like, what was the gap? So to help us solve that problem, we decided to bring in an entrepreneur in residence to help us think about solutions. So Kayla, will you introduce yourself, please, and tell us a little bit more about the Entrepreneur in Residence program and why a team was brought on board to work with the Regenerative Grazing Lands team on this project?
Thanks, Nancy. Happy to be here with you all. My name is Kayla Sonato. I'm TNC's Agriculture Innovation Strategy Manager. And as Nancy mentioned, I worked quite closely with her and her team to bring this Entrepreneur in Residence assignment to fruition. And before I jump into why we brought them on board, I'm going to take a step back and highlight a bit further why innovation is so important to TNC. So as Nancy said, we're addressing the interconnected crises of climate change and biodiversity loss. And we know that an integral way to do this that's critical is working with farmers and ranchers that are the stewards of our working lands. And we want to work with them to both support the transformation to regenerative operations, as well as build resilience in the communities that they live and work to. However, I think as we all know, business as usual is not working. It's not happening fast enough, and it's not happening at the scale needed to achieve our global goals. So that is why TNC has developed an agriculture innovation strategy. And as Nancy mentioned, we're using purposeful innovation to drive the market transformation to regenerative agriculture. And we're doing that in three ways. Like all those tools that Nancy mentioned, we're trying to weed through everything that's out there and identify what the most promising tools and solutions are. And then if we find one that we think is particularly relevant, we then sometimes directly invest in early stage companies that are the ones actually building these tools. Then we work with our teams on the grounds and with ranchers and their communities to actually pilot, to test and assess solutions. And for that, we're looking at both the environmental as well as the business outcomes too. And then we're sharing what we're learning, like we're doing on this panel, more broadly to promote greater ecosystem action. So with this assignment, we really wanted to hone in and identify what kind of that next most promising, the sexiest tool on the market might be to roll out and achieve our goals and also support the bottom line of ranching. We did that, but then we also wanted to bring an entrepreneur in residence on board because we also want to test new concepts and approaches. And bringing on someone that can apply more of a business lens, not the traditional conservation lens that we all use, as well as a fresh perspective to really help us uncover new areas for work and new solutions that we might not have thought about previously. So we worked very closely with Nancy and the Regenerative Grazing Lands team to design this assignment with those goals in mind, looking at tools and technology that we thought would be best positioned to support. And I think that's the context. Happy to dive in if you want me to talk about anything else though too, Nancy.
No, that's great. Just a follow-up question. Can you maybe just talk about any other teams within the Nature Conservancy that are using an entrepreneur in residence or using this type of innovation approach?
Yes. So although this is somewhat of a new concept and approach being used at TNC, it is something that folks across the globe are now using. And it's a key strategy of one of our teams, which is called the Agility Lab. And they're another one of our innovation colleagues that are thinking about all the ways outside of the traditional conservation NGO box that we can work. And they are matchmaking with teams like the Regenerative Grazing Lands team and what we've done here with TNC teams across the globe to bring in like-minded individuals to the Celium team, which you're going to hear about today. And they're focusing on how to unlock when a team has a really promising concept that's shown legs in a pilot or a small project, but they're having a challenge of figuring out exactly how to scale that initiative. The entrepreneur in residence managed by the Agility Lab are helping them to create tangible plans to be able to scale initiatives further. And we've been going on with a learning journey with them at the same time, which has been really exciting, and been able to share lessons learned and findings across our two assignments to really enable other teams to be able to lock into this innovation mindset and apply it to their work.
Awesome. Thank you, Kayla. Tegan, would you please introduce yourself and please tell us why there are so many dang tools out there and maybe touch on some of the work we've done as it relates to these types of tools.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. Hi, everyone. I'm Tegan May. I'm with the North America Regenerative Grazing Lands team, working with Nancy as a project manager. So we were building on some of the work that Nancy spoke about, looking at metrics and indicators for ranch sustainability. And I was tasked with inventorying the well-known popular tools and products and tech available on the market that support grazing management, monitoring, and record keeping. I was quickly overwhelmed with just what was out there. I was compiling, information on the cost, the functionality, speaking with ranchers about the pros and cons, kind of researching and looking at what was out there for different user experiences. We were also testing some of these tools with our ranch partners on the lands that TNC owns to get more of a firsthand experience about some of these tools. And, we quickly found that there may be a tool that some people love, and that same tool doesn't do something else that someone else is looking for. And so there's no perfect tool, right? And I think we all know that. And so we started thinking about, well, is the solution improving an existing tool? Is the solution combining tools? Or maybe it's connecting the different tools because, all these tools have this different functionality. If they just talk to each other or shared information, maybe we would get closer to having, a more full picture that could actually help, producers make decisions. Or is it a completely new tool, right? And so we kind of came to this kind of standstill of not knowing which direction was the right one to go. And then we also found that there was already inventories existing, 2 different places that had 500 decision support tools already cataloged and already available. And so, was there a need for like a whole like other like toolbox that catalogs all these tools in a different way and classifies them in a different way? We didn't think that was actually a need that existed because it was already filled. And so I'll just talk a little bit about the proliferation of decision support tools. I feel like it's often based on the assumption that more and better information can help people make better decisions, right? About anything in life. This assumes that you know the right questions to ask, where to find that information, and have the time to read, digest, and weigh the different information so you can then make the best decision for your situation. And I think ranching is no different. So the landscape of information tools, programs, and technology promising to create value can be super overwhelming. And that's the point where we were like, we really need help and we need someone with fresh eyes and perspective to look at all these tools. Is there a leading tool there? Is there not? Do we need a new tool? And that's where we turned to the Entrepreneur in Residence program and the Celium group to help us navigate that. So I'll turn it over to Reed to talk about, well, sorry, go Nancy.
Nope, that's good. Thank you. And I'm going to leave my video off because it's jumping around a little bit. So Reed, would you please introduce your team and tell us what is the role of software and data management and how did this inform the work that you did with TNC and the outcomes?
Awesome. Yeah, we're super excited to be here. And I'll let Carson and Jake kind of introduce themselves as we move forward. But we got this, it came across my desk and my inbox a couple different ways, and same with Jake, as we saw, hey, the TNC is looking to do a regenerative grazing EIR. And I was loosely familiar with the concept of EIRs. I've been working in the tech industry for a while now and have a background in ranching all across North America. And so I saw this and was like, wow, what a great opportunity. This sounds fun. And so I talked to Jake and I went and had coffee with Carson here in Spearfish. And before we knew it, we were putting together an application and before we knew it, a month or two later than that, we were working with you guys on this effort. Fast forward a couple of months or a month or two, and we hit pretty quickly into we start digging into the tools lists and the lists. And I've spent the last 3 or 4 years building software tools that contribute to that list and decision support tooling and all of these kind of things. And it really got a little existential pretty quickly, right? Where the role of software and data in this space was kind of our mission. We were trying to understand like what are the software and data tools that can help ranchers improve 240 million acres, right? We kept coming back to the goal of TNC's team. And the more we thought about it, the more we were like, well, it's definitely not another decision support tool, right? We know that because there's a million of them out there. And if they're working, then they would start to gain traction. And for something to work, it needs a lot of different components. It needs good product market fit. It needs good go-to-market strategies. It needs all these things. But so we were like, well, we don't want to spend our energy really thinking about another tool that just works to build on top of this mess. Let's just like go to the drawing board and think as creatively as possible about software and data. And when we think about software, we understood TNC was looking to software, and I think a lot of people in this space right now look to software because it's seen as the key to scale, right? And it's like we can't scale unless we get software behind us, because then we can get 240 million acres worth of information, and that's how we're going to build this big landscape scale efforts that we need. And I think what can happen there is software can only scale as far as the system underlying the software is scaling as well. And so often I think there's a dissonance there where if we just had a really good software interface, then every rancher could just use it and they would improve their management and boom, it's solved. We took a step back and we go, man, we've been trying that for a while now and it doesn't seem to be working. So what's an alternative? And that's really what led us to go, okay, let's focus on the process of how management changes happen on the land. And Carson and Jake and I, and a lot of conversations with our rancher colleagues and friends, we were like, okay, the change happens because people trust somebody to help them make a change. And that trust is the real commodity there. And then from there, what's needed in order for that change to be the best change possible? Well, that's actually where software and data management makes sense, because now, because we have intuitive data systems, we can collect data that gets funds back from corporations or whomever to the rancher, and you create kind of a connection system through the internet, right? And there's a role there for that data transfer to happen, and then the financial returns to come alongside that. But also there's this other role where if you provide good systems for the ranch advisors or the people that a rancher goes to make improvements on their operation, then you've now empowered that person to actually be better at their job too. So we saw these kind of two roles that it was playing, and then we spent the rest of our time kind of really working within those two scenarios to identify ways that TNC and others can build on these concepts.
Awesome. Thank you, Reed. So Carson, you're a rancher and a ranch advisor playing double duty. Why don't you introduce yourself? Give us a little bit of context about you and the ranch that you're operating, and then can you just give us why is ranch advising important, and from your perspective?
Yep, absolutely. My name's Carson Sleep. I'm a sixth generation rancher here in Spearfish, South Dakota. I ranch alongside my parents and my grandparents. Married, got 2 little kiddos. And then on the side, I do some carbon consulting. I have a small agency called Heritage Carbon Agency. Basically what I do is just help ranchers make sense of the carbon markets. I got involved pretty early with the carbon markets. Once I heard about them, I thought they were pretty interesting. I thought there could be a huge opportunity there for ranchers to earn some additional income, but was also seeing, maybe some ranchers being taken advantage of by different companies, by different contracts. So what I do is I go in, talk with the rancher, help them, look at all the different options they have to participate in carbon markets. And we go through the contracts, go through the companies, and just say what makes sense for your operation. Which ones I kind of help stray them away from some companies that I don't think would fit their operation, or that I think whose contracts are a little bit overreaching, maybe take away some of those landowner rights that, as a rancher myself, I think are pretty important to keep. But in the end, I let that landowner, that rancher make the decision, but I'm there to help guide and inform. So that's why I got into this space. I think ranch advisors, or having a ranch advisor network, is really important, because as a rancher myself, it's hard for a company to come in, some big corporation to come into a rancher and say, hey, I'm going to pay you for your carbon or for some other program that they're doing, without building up some trust first, where me as a rancher, that trust is already built with other ranchers. I definitely have to verify myself with ranchers, talking through them and building a relationship. But having that peer-to-peer trust and just knowing the industry, knowing the challenges that we all face together collectively as a whole, definitely helps build that relationship. And just getting in there as a ranch advisor, I think it's really important. I think it will be growing, and I think it's really important to help, get this change going along, helping to improve management. When we're talking about avoided conversion and improved management on 40 million acres, we think people are a huge part in the solution to that, and ranch advisors can play a huge role. I also got into it as a way, as a young rancher coming back to my family operation. It's hard to get your feet under you and start running a profitable business as the young guy. So this was also an opportunity for me to kind of get some additional income to support my family and support my efforts on the ranch. Is there any other questions I missed, Nancy, that we could touch on?
No, I think you covered it. The other thing I would just ask, maybe you or Reed or both, this technical assistance platform that that you guys have come up with, and that we've sort of been thinking about, called the Ranch Advisor Network for Grazing Enterprises. How is that different from, say, existing technical assistance that a rancher might receive like say from NRCS, for example?
Yeah, I'll take a quick step back too and kind of touch on, I guess, the EIR story of basically we saw all these tools and the goal being improved management on the land. And to touch back, kind of our concept and design, and we haven't really talked about it in detail yet, is basically we were like, well, we need a network, right? Where it's a network problem because we're trying to scale, and it's the same that we do in software. So we're really building that network with people like Carson, folks who grew up on ranches, who are connected in rural communities, and can be that conduit for the producers on the ground. And that way we have that person is who we can interact with from a carbon market or an insetting program or whatever another nonprofit endeavor to improve rangelands, that you can really go to those ranch advisors and say, hey, how should we design this program, or what do your ranchers really need in order to make changes? And you don't have to go back to the same few ranchers who are kind of informing a lot of these programs. You now have a network of ranch advisors. To your point, Nancy, that network exists in some ways, right? We have extension offices, we have the NRCS, who's built like county level offices. Lawrence County here in South Dakota, we've got well, actually, we kind of share it with Butte, but we've got our local FSA and NRCS agents, and you can go to them and sign up for federal programs. The key is that those federal agents, who we respect and we're so glad that they're doing the work that they're doing, they're agents of the federal government. They're working on behalf of these programs to distribute federal funds to improve land or make changes however the Farm Bill programs see fit. What we're really advocating for is folks like Carson who can work on behalf of the rancher to find the right program. Maybe it's a carbon program, maybe it's an insetting program, maybe it's EQIP through the federal government, and really provide a broader view of the landscape. And the NRCS, through their Climate Smart program and some other initiatives, are actually really pushing for a model that more works with this public and private kind of TSP concept, where, yeah, they understand the federal programs, but they might sign up a rancher for a program through TNC or through World Wildlife Fund or through a carbon agency. And so and really helping the rancher identify where they should land in this confusing landscape of programs, rather than the programs coming to the rancher and being an agent of the program. We kind of believe the fundamental shift is really we need agents of the ranch representing them against the programs.
Yep, I'd just piggyback off that a little bit too. We see ranchers are busy enough running their operation. They don't necessarily have the time to go out and, learn what are the newest and best practices. What is the science saying is the best practice for improved management right now? What's the new science, or what are the new programs coming out from EQIP? Or I always go back to carbon because it's what I work in, but there's a whole slew of programs and stuff out there. So if you could have a guy who's just on top of everything, just knows kind of in general what's going on in the whole space, whether that's improved management, whether that's succession planning, whether that's carbon markets, whatever that is, and then he can go to the rancher and say, here's this new program. I thought of you. You're operating in this way. I thought you'd be a good fit. I think it could provide an opportunity for additional income. I think it could save you on your time and your labor, just something like that. I'm as an advisor, I hear all about guys that are using virtual fence. Here's how it's working for them. Here's how it could work for you or couldn't work for you. Just a guy to help them make those decisions, rather than the rancher trying to do it all on their own, which ranchers like to be independent, but in this day and age, we know ranchers have to, have a lot of knowledge in a lot of different areas. And it's just it's unsustainable to expect that of ranchers going into the future.
We interviewed a lot of folks, Nancy, as part of this project. And one of my favorite ones, like a guy named Todd Graham, who runs Ranch Advisor Partners. And he was like, we were talking about kind of, their business model and trying to learn the landscape. And he goes, the ranch manager of today has to have enough knowledge in as many domains. They should make $300,000 a year with how smart you have to be in the systems you have to manage, and you're doing personnel and ecosystem management and land management and capital markets and all these things. And they make like $45,000 a year, and that's the the dissonance we often have. And so, yeah, that was just to Carson's point. You got to know so much today, and finding ways that we can come alongside those ranchers to help them navigate it, we see as the key to scale.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that, because that's exactly right. They have to know so much, and the idea of having a person out there that helps them is fantastic. So, Jake, I want to make sure that we get to you as, and if you could just introduce yourself as well and talk a little bit about the role of capital in these solutions for the ranching sector, and how have the goals of funders challenged growth or change in the ranching space in particular?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Jake. I work for an investment group called New Leaf Climate Partners, where we invest in nature-based solutions projects. My career actually started in venture capital. So I was on the other side of all of these software platforms, where we are looking at, thousands of different B2B SaaS platforms every year, and placing investments in them. And we did see quite a bit of ag tech and ranch tech throughout that time. But as as I've gotten older, as I've left venture, actually joined a startup for a number of years, and now I'm more in an investment role that deploys more patient capital. And I think one of the largest one of the takeaways that we got out of this our position, and from my experience working in VC, is venture might not always be the right fit, especially for a lot of these ranch tech startups. And there's a million different reasons why it might not be the right form of capital, but one of the primary ones is there's kind of a saying in Silicon Valley in the startup world, which is move fast, break things, and that works with software. So say I'm coding some AI chatbot or something, that if it doesn't work, you just go back into the code, change the little thing. If it doesn't work again, you change it until it starts working. But oftentimes, and you have all this data, and data is like being filtered back into your process. But with ranching, you kind of sometimes only have one data point a year. It's like, how much did I produce this year? And you can't really move fast and break things, because that is, it could be the livelihood of your ranch. It could be the livelihood of your livestock. And so the sort of idea that you can iterate really quickly with ranching is just, it doesn't really work with ranching. And what often happens here is a lot of trust can be eroded. So say I say I'm the founder of a ranch tech startup, and I go enroll 100 different ranchers, and then I lose funding 2 years later because my company's not profitable anymore. I'm probably going to be okay. I might just go start another company or something, but the ranchers are often left holding the bag. And I think a lot of the ranchers that we spoke to during the CIR process was we got that sentiment of, a whole bunch of folks are coming to us with different software platforms and this and that, and then they enroll into them and they spend all of this time, and then the piece of software dies. And so we saw a lot of what we would call software rot, which is whether it's a venture funded software platform, or some decision support tool from an extension service of these pieces of software get created, and then they're kind of not taken care of anymore, and they might not be updated. And so what we really need to think about is, outside of even like the software tooling, is what type of capital is needed to have impact across the ranching space. And so I think one of the hardest things, well, not one of the hardest things, is one of the things that we started to think about, especially as we started coming up with this Ranch Advisor network solution, is a startup doesn't need to be a software tech platform. A startup could be Carson, who has carbon, his heritage carbon, like consulting business. Essentially, is how do we go into all these regions, and how do we find the small businesses or people that want to actually that have the ability to create change, and how do we invest in them? And I think this is hopefully, as as our idea kind of proliferates through the like grazing industry throughout the US, is we also have to have trust. We've been talking a lot about how trust is a commodity that what our main argument for this is we have to start investing more in people, because people are a durable solution. One of the things that we also saw was, imagine you're a corporate or a philanthropic funder and you see a really cool project over there and you plow a whole bunch of money into it, but for some reason your funding dries up. That pilot may have been great, but then all of the folks who are involved in it and any amount of software that was created for it, once the funding dries up, all of that, not all of the information is lost, but a lot of progress is lost in there. And so it's what we have to think about is what are like the durable uses of capital. And so say you help fund Carson's replica somewhere in a different part of the US, that person, if their company becomes sustainable and like is actually making money, that person is going to be there as long as that company is making money, and that's a durable solution. And so some of the challenges, and I've kind of touched on all of these in the last couple of minutes, is with venture, high growth doesn't always align with kind of the ranching revenue model. First, ranches are already have a hard enough time becoming profitable, and a lot of these software solutions are saying, hey, there's 700,000 ranchers. So that means our total addressable market is this much, and that's going to be it's going to be this. But a lot of the times the ranchers don't have a lot of additional revenue to even use these software products that are promising a more profitable ranch. And then from the corporate and philanthropic funding side, this is sort of my personal opinion. But I think it's something that it does need to be talked about more, is I think a lot of the times the funding is too focused on measurement or pure carbon. And one of the things that is the hardest, it's like that is hard to measure in a human being. And so it's like, imagine you invest in you are investing in a network of people. I think that can be a little bit scary, because it's like, well, how do we measure the impact? And I want to challenge sort of the idea that you can't have change, or you can't have impact without being able to measure that change. And I think I really want to challenge that, because if you save a ranch from, say, becoming converted into row crop, and that ranch is profitable for the next 50 years, that you had impact. You don't need to exactly measure 37 like ranch level indicators. And so when we are proposing these projects, or like going to get funding for some of these things, really really push your funders to say, like, we know that we're going to have impact, and focus on like larger level. And this is how we started the EIR position, was like, what is the thing that we're trying to do? And it's to avoid conversion on ranch land in the US, and then like really anchor your projects on that. And then from a government funding standpoint, this just goes back to sort of this idea of software rot, which is, we saw this all over the place. So much funding was going to, we created this decision support tool that a master's student might have been their master's project, but really thinking about how can we take this funding and make solutions that don't just get thrown in the bin once that person leaves. And so, yeah, that's kind of my spiel on the capital sources, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Jake. And one of the things that I think from my perspective that came out of this was the fact that it's not a tool problem, it's a people problem. And the people that might use the tools, the 500 plus tools that we found, maybe those are the Carsons of the world, or those ranch advisors. It's not really the rancher that is going to use the tools, because the ranch advisor is going to know what tool is going to be the best for whatever application. That's one of their roles. Okay,
and
so go ahead.
I was just going to dovetail off that really quick, of like, you're exactly right with this is sort of one of the other findings from all of this work, is the advisor is likely going to be the one using all of these tools. So it's like we want to have the rancher doing what they do best, which is ranching, and not managing 16 different software platforms that help them manage like the I don't know, like QuickBooks, or like doing all of the mapping on their property. But like really having this advisor being able to work with, say, 20 different ranchers. And that's sort of where this idea of scalable impact, I think, is most powerful with these software platforms. So
an analogy, Nancy, we used with you guys, and I'll just share it here for this, is there's a few good analogies to the system. When we talk about metrics and data, how often do you let, or if you run a small business, right? How often are you the person every day working on your accounting structure, running payroll, managing all of your tax information to structure that data and get it to the IRS, right? Some people do that on their own. And we think that about ranchers too. There's some ranchers who love map data and they love financial data and they can sit behind spreadsheets and grab it all. And that's how they operate. And they probably don't need somebody else to come in and help them. But I know a lot of small business owners. My dad is one of them, runs a construction business. And you know what he does not like to do is enter data for his business, right? He wants to be out there running his business, winning clients, working on houses, all that kind of stuff. We found that for so many of these software tools too, right? Where the ranchers, it's not for them. It's for somebody who can, like the bookkeepers of the world, who can come and help them manage these tools.
Yeah, I love that. So I just want to wrap up here, and I'm going to ask all of you one final question, and we'll just kind of go back in reverse order. So what excites you about this work and the next steps that we're taking? So Jake, I'm going to start with you, and we'll end with Kayla.
Sweet, that sounds good. I broadly work in the conservation space, and I think what I'm most excited about is sort of using this exercise to reframe a lot of the problems that I encounter in the conservation space. And that's sort of, how can we reframe the problem as how can we invest in people instead of products? And I think that's a super powerful framework to work on when you're like thinking about any of these types of conservation or regenerative ag problems. And then additionally, how can we tell some of these conservation stories that more focus on the resilience of the system, and not just thinking about like, oh, yes, I obviously believe in climate change and how it's affecting our ecosystems, but how and that we need to sequester carbon, but we also need resilient people and climate systems. And so it's like, yes, carbon is important, but how can we also focus on resilience? And sort of my thing that I've been saying lately is we actually can't have climate resilience without rural economic resilience, because ultimately the people, like especially particularly in the US, like the people are managing the land, and if we don't have those folks in a position where they're able to do so, then we also don't have resilient ecosystems. So that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, must have the rural communities there. So Carson, what excites you about this project and our next steps?
Yeah, very, very similar to Jake. I guess what excites me most, not only is the improvement we could see on the land, but also, we're seeing ranches are discontinuing at an alarming rate. Younger generations aren't coming back because maybe the ranch isn't profitable. Maybe it's too much labor. Who knows, for a whole slew of reasons. We're seeing, other countries and corporations buying up ranch and farmland. I just see that there could be a huge opportunity here to keep these ranches, or keep ranches and ranch lands in family farms, family ranches, keep those families ranching and profitable. And I think that's what excites me most.
Yep, I love that. We'd like to keep you on the land, Carson, definitely. Reed, how about you? I know you got a lot to say about this subject.
Yeah, I really, this has been a really fun project. Really, I think when you just get a bunch of fun, smart people in a room, it's kind of cool what can happen. And so it's just been a great time overall. And I think data and software are part of the solution, but I don't think they are the solution. And we have to put data in the right people's hands, put software in the right people's hands. And then to Jake's point, we got to start telling a story that is really what we want. And we know that carbon and grasslands, there's something going on there, but it's really, really expensive to measure. And that's not the story that matters the most. The story that matters the most is as we've said, is keeping ranchers on the land. And then the ranchers who are there, making sure they have the tools to improve their management to stay there. And And I think, you know, my company, we build software for climate smart grants. We build data architecture systems across scaled projects. And we'll continue to do that because I think it's important. But first, we got to nail down getting the right people into these communities to build a more resilient system. So, yeah,
Yep.
that's
Love that.
all I'll say about that.
Tegan, how about you?
Yeah, so for me, this project shone a light on the rancher networks and technical advisors that already exist in providing real value to their communities. These are places where ranchers are excited about monitoring and they have the support to collect and interpret the data to help guide the management decisions. So I'm excited that this project looks closely at these successes and outline ways to replicate and connect the efforts and where to plug in the tools and techs to add the real value. And so we're not trying to recreate the wheel. We are looking at what is working. And one of the moments I think really crystallized this for me with working with the Cilium group was I think one of the first meetings, and that, you know, they'd been asking ranchers about the tools and like what was the real need. And they came back and they said, what we need, and they named a trusted person in their community. And so I'm just really excited that, you know, hopefully we can build something that puts more of those trusted people in communities.
Yeah, I love that. Trust is the commodity here. Kayla, how about you?
Great. Thanks for putting all the pressure on me to wrap up all these brilliant thoughts with my own. I think there are two main things that excite me about this work. I think, first of all, as everyone I think heard from this session, this entrepreneur in residence engagement was really successful and really supported TNC to unlock a new solution. And I think something that was critical that we always have to remind ourselves of is that we always need to start with the challenge or the most major roadblock we're facing. That should be our guiding star. And we think creatively as best as we can to design a solution that actually meets that challenge without having preconceived notions about what the best solution is. If you come in it from that framework, you have a brilliant group like everyone here. I think you're going to be able to achieve a lot, and it's something that we need to continue to remind us in all of the sector as well. And then secondly, just to reiterate everyone's point about how important it is to build community and economic resilience. Whenever we're looking at a solution, whether it's a technology, a new program, some kind of tool, we're not just looking at the environmental outcomes. Those are great. We need those to ensure that we're going to have a lasting future on the lands that we have. But we also need to make sure that we are also achieving outcomes for ranch operations and businesses. And I think the model that we have here, like Carson mentioned, is going to keep ranching families on the ranch and be profitable so that they can ensure it's passed down generation to generation, and then also open new avenues for livelihood and income generation through the ability to start a new business with ranching advising services, which is really exciting because I think we can tap into, like Carson also said, younger generations, getting them back on the land and working with ranchers in a meaningful way, as well as working with diverse populations throughout that might not have had this opportunity previously. So I think we're going to see that outcome of the community and people resilience really be the lasting impact that this program will have once we start to implement it.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, one of the things that I think for me that excites me is that, you know, coming into this, we had a wicked problem that we really thought we knew the answer to, right? It was another tool. And I think what we came out of this through this project was through purposeful innovation, we found a really true solution. So we also know like partnerships are really key in deploying a solution like this one. And so we're excited to continue working with the National Grazing Land Coalition and the rancher-led coalitions at the state level to try to further refine and hopefully to network of ranch advisors that will be there, you know, more Carsons to help ranchers on their quest to be not only more profitable, but to use less resources and have an improved way of life, which is really being more sustainable. So with that, we want to thank you for your attendance.